Geneva Watch Days 2024 has come and gone, and there were a lot of really cool releases. Let's take a look at 10 of my favorites. Geneva Watch Days is definitely not as big an event as Watches and Wonders. You don't see as much press there, particularly American press, and not as many brands are exhibiting. But it's still the second biggest trade show in the watch industry, and there's a lot to like about the event. For one, it's decentralized, taking place all around the city of Geneva, including in some of the hotels and in the brand boutiques. Plus, there are a lot of smaller independent brands exhibiting that just don't have the resources to exhibit at Watches and Wonders. So for these reasons, Geneva Watch Days is a great event and worth paying attention to. Plus, on top of all of this, many brands will release some exciting new timepieces. So now I'm back after attending my first Geneva Watch Days, and I wanted to go through 10 of my favorite releases from the event. And remember, if you've been enjoying my content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video. Let's go. So one of the most surprising releases that came out of Geneva Watch Days was a collaboration between high horology brand H. Moser and affordable micro brand Studio Underdog. Yes, you heard that correctly, but it makes a lot more sense when you go beyond the surface level of these two brands. Yes, Moser is pretty expensive and Studio Underdog very accessible, but these two brands share a design ethos. They never take things too seriously. I mean, Moser made a watch out of cheese, and Underdog designed a watch with a dial that looks like a pizza. The collaboration between the two brands is a set of two watches to be sold together, a perpetual calendar from Moser and a monopusher chronograph from Studio Underdog. Both the watches feature a purple and yellow colorway. However, the dial effects are achieved in completely different ways. For example, the Moser uses purple lacquer and a Grand Few enamel. Obviously, the way Studio Underdog achieves a similar effect is a lot more affordable. The collaboration is limited to 100 sets and the watches will only be sold together. I will note that the price of it is $64,900 for the pair, and that has caused some Studio Underdog collectors to feel some frustration. It would have been nice to see 50 pieces sold as part of a set and 50 pieces to be sold individually, perhaps in a raffle, in order to give Underdog's clientele the ability to purchase. That being said, I am a big fan of this collaboration, and I know the Underdog is just an introduction to the Series 3, which will hopefully be available in the near future. Frédéric Constant has made a name for itself creating complicated watches at relatively affordable prices, at least compared to their other Swiss counterparts. One of my favorites that fits into this category is the new classic tourbillon manufacture with an aventurine dial. We are seeing a resurgence of precious and rare stone dials, bringing with them a new degree of uniqueness, as no dial will ever be exactly the same. The tourbillon that sits at the 6 o'clock position is a reminder that despite their relative price range, Frédéric Constant can still execute this complication just as well as brands who were responsible for pioneering and developing it. The whole watch is just sharp, both in the dial and case, which is made out of white gold, and it's put on a very nice alligator leather strap that matches pretty well. The 36 watches will be available at retail for $39,995. Look, I'm a fan of Jacob & Co. Can I afford most of their watches? No. Do I love every single watch they make? Of course not. But in the realm of high horology and jewelry pieces, Jacob & Co. surely has a seat at the table. But over the years, one of the criticisms that I have seen levied at the brand is the size of some of their pieces. At the end of the day, a 50mm Astronomia tourbillon or oil pump is just not wearable by most. So following the footsteps of the Astronomia Solar, Jacob & Co. released a new oil pump, which is a much more wearable 44mm. 44mm isn't exactly small, but for all that it's being packed into this watch, I think it's the right size. Like its predecessor, it has a tourbillon, but this time it's a single axis as opposed to a double axis tourbillon. And of course, it has an oil derrick automation. By pressing the button on the top right of the case, you can see the oil derrick go for 35 seconds. I just think it's different and very cool. 88 pieces are being made in rose gold. It retails for $280,000. I have always really loved De Bethune as a brand. Their futuristic design and articulating lug set the brand apart from everything else on the market. But one of the problems I've always had with the brand is the large size of most of their watches. Apparently, I'm not the only one who's thought this way, and De Bethune has been sizing down many of their models in recent years. At this year's Geneva Watch Days, the brand unveiled a sized-down version of the DB28 steel wheels, which was first released in 2018. The new variation is 39 millimeters in diameter. That's 4 millimeters smaller than the previous version, and you can really tell the difference on the wrist. With the articulating lugs, the watch fits incredibly well and snug on my 6.75-inch wrist. Plus, the watch just looks great. The openwork movement has been completely polished, giving the watch a retro, futuristic aesthetic. The new steel wheels retails for $90,000, and I'm sure it'll be very popular among collectors of high-end independents. De Bethune was perhaps the watch I saw most while walking around Geneva during Geneva Watch Days. Not all new releases have to be groundbreaking. Sometimes a sensible addition to an existing collection is enough. That's what Oris did with the new Aquis chronograph. As you'll recall, Oris gave the Aquis a makeover, unveiling the new collection at Watches and Wonders just a few months ago. This makeover included higher-end finishings, better case design, and a revamped bracelet. Overall, it just gave the Aquis a fresh update while still maintaining the Aquis aesthetic. And with their latest release, Oris has taken those updates and applied them to the Aquis chronograph. The 43.5mm watch features a fairly standard 3-sub-dial chronograph, but what isn't standard is the sunray dial. The shade of blue used by Oris on this watch is not your typical navy or baby blue. It's so well done, but you really need to see it in person to appreciate it. The new Oris Aquis chronograph retails for $4,900. When Max Buster unveiled the Mad 1 back in 2021, it was the talk of the industry. While not technically an MB&F, the $3,000 watch had MB&F's DNA without MB&F's price tag. Employing an inverted Japanese Miyota movement and hours and minute discs, the watch brought avant-garde to the masses, at least theoretically. The Mad 1 has been so popular in all of its iterations that most people weren't actually able to purchase them in the raffles, in addition to the bots and flippers snapping them up. Well, this year's Geneva Watch Days, the Mad 1 got its first major overhaul, beyond just a color change. The new Mad 1S is sleeker and slimmer than the original, and it has me wanting to trade up. While the case diameter is still 42 millimeters, the watch has been slimmed down from 18.8 millimeters to 15 millimeters. How was this done? Well, Buster and team replaced the Miyota movement with a bidirectional winding Swiss La Joux-Perret G101 movement. Additionally, the minutes disc has been completely removed. This makes time telling a little less accurate, but makes a much more wearable watch. The new Mad 1S is available in purple for friends of the brand, which are really just people who have purchased an MB&F in the past, and in blue for those who win the raffle. They both retail for 2,900 Swiss francs, which is about $3,400. I would say that the biggest surprise to come out of Geneva Watch Days 2024, and I think this is even bigger than the Moser and Studio Underdog collaboration, was the release of the ThinKing prototype by independent Russian watchmaker Konstantin Chaykin. Remember, it was just a few months ago at Watches and Wonders where Bulgari retook the crown for World's Thinnest Watch from Richard Mille, releasing the 1.7mm thick Bulgari Octo Finissimo Ultra 10408. Well, the Konstantin Chaykin ThinKing is just 1.65mm thin. What's so interesting about the watch is actually the way it works. The watch is wound and set through keys, but there is an option to turn the watch from manual wind to automatic. Chaykin is developing a module with a micro rotor that, when attached, will allow the wearer to set the watch through a crown and transforms the watch from hand winding to automatic winding. With the added module, the watch goes from 1.65mm thick to 5.4mm thick, which is still pretty thin. You can decide whether to wear the watch with or without the module, depending on the activity. It's really impressive and definitely exciting to see the innovation come from a smaller independent watchmaker. As the ThinKing is currently a prototype, price has not yet been determined. When I first saw the Burneron Mirage, I immediately fell in love. The asymmetric design was funky, yet the watch still stood out as a classy dress watch. During Geneva Watch Days, I was able to meet with the brand's founder, Sylvain Burneron, and learn more about the development of the Mirage and the movement in particular. What was most interesting to me was the fact that, unlike most asymmetrical watch designs, and there are plenty of them out there now, the Mirage wasn't a design-first project. Indeed, the form follows function for the Mirage. In order to provide more power reserve to the manual winding Mirage and keep the watch incredibly thin, Sylvain had to increase the size of the barrel. And how did he do that without drastically increasing the size of the watch? He elongated the case, giving it the asymmetrical design that everyone loves so much. The result is a watch that is just 7 millimeters thick, including the curved crystal, and has a very respectable 60 hours of power reserve. Indeed, the movement is incredibly only 2.3 millimeters thick. Well, the two variations of the original Mirage are currently sold out, but Berneron did unveil two smaller versions of the watch at Geneva Watch Days. The Mirage 34 keeps the same case design, but sizes it down from 37.5 millimeters to 34 millimeters. A whole new movement had to be developed for the smaller case, which to me is just a very impressive feat from such a young brand. The main difference in the Mirage 34 are the dial choices. Berneron opted to use stone dials on the new pieces, one with tiger eye and one with lapis lazuli. The most interesting thing about these two dials is the way the stone was cut. Each dial is a single piece of stone with the subsidiary second scooped out by hand, giving it additional depth. Apparently this was incredibly hard to achieve, because the watchmakers working on the dial would never know if the process of cutting out part of the dial would expose flaws, and thus make the dial unusable. The result, however, is stunning, and I'm sure Berneron has another winner on their hands with the Mirage 34. Gerald Charles, the last brand founded by the iconic Gerald Genta, has been gaining attention and acclaim since the brand was reinvigorated by CEO Federico Ziviani. It began with the Maestro, a reinterpretation of Genta's final design. Indeed, the brand's entire catalog has been an offshoot of this design, including the recently introduced Masterlink, the brand's first integrated bracelet stainless steel sport watch. But that's not to say there isn't a lot of diversity in the catalog. From sunray dials to chronographs to skeleton dials, and even dials mimicking clay and grass tennis courts, Gerald Charles has presented plenty of diversity within a single core collection. The newest release from the brand continues this ethos. For the 30th anniversary of Ducati's iconic 916 motorcycle, the two brands teamed up to create a new Maestro. This watch not only includes Ducati's iconic red on the dial as well as the strap, but also includes a new complication for the brand. This release is Gerald Charles's first foray into the jumping hour complication. This is impressive to me since often when two brands collab, the collaboration ends up just being a change in color scheme to an existing watch. The fact that Gerald Charles created something new is how I think collaborations should be done. The Maestro 4.0 Ducati is a limited edition of 250 pieces and retails for $42,400. Beyond the Laureato, Girard-Perregaux is probably best known for their watches with 3 bridges dial side. Indeed, GP received a patent for a tourbillon with 3 bridges visible on the dial all the way back in 1884. So there clearly is a lot of history there. And since 1884, there have been many new variations of the 3 bridges design, including more recent models that have increasingly modern designs. The new tourbillon with 3 flying bridges was released at Geneva Watch Days and blends the traditional design with modern aesthetics. The dial is skeletonized, with the tourbillon positioned at the bottom of the dial where the 3rd bridge is located. The tourbillon's cage is made from titanium, showcasing GP's willingness to update their classics in a more modern way. And the best part of the watch? Well, you can see through the entire watch. It's completely open-worked, more so than any previous version of the 3 bridges. In rose gold, it just blends Girard-Perregaux's traditional watchmaking with a forward-thinking aesthetic. It retails for $171,000. So those were my 10 personal favorites from this year's Geneva Watch Days. What was your favorite release? Let me know in the comments. And remember, if you've been enjoying my videos, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.